What's up, YouTube? Welcome to episode 1 of Cosplay Basics again. I already filmed this episode and put it up, but I misspoke on one line. It was a 1/4 inch border all around, and on both sides of a pattern, that does make a 1/2 inch. So since in my head I knew what I was talking about, and literally 99.9 of everything else in the video that I do is exact to what I do, a user, I don't remember the exact username, I'm sorry, Friskers something, string of numbers, pointed this out. I'm sorry, I don't remember your username exactly, but thank you for pointing this out. But due to that, I'm not gonna, go into YouTube and type a banner message, oh, I said this wrong, what I really meant to say was this. No. I'm not doing that. So I'm refilming the entire episode, start to finish, and re-uploading it. But I thought, I had a lot of questions on how you make patterns, let alone use them. So I thought, instead of making that 2 episodes, how about I make this episode a double? And we'll go from pattern creation to pattern scaling, and so on. So if you're watching my channel just for build videos, and this is not a build video, you may want to skip this. But if you're interested in some of the stuff I don't go into in the videos as much, and also this answers a lot of questions that I constantly get on Etsy and Facebook and Instagram and emails, basic things that I don't cover in the videos, that me and other people like me just kind of leave it up to you, I think, to figure it out. If you, like I say, email me or ask me a question, I will answer it. In fact, I was even on a video chat with Archotech on Instagram the other day, helping him with his very first build on a Predator biomask. So hopefully this will help clear up some questions, and any other corresponding questions you may have, just feel free to ask. And let's just go ahead and jump right into the video. So the first thing I'm going to start talking about is why I do patterns. And the reason why I do my own patterns and make my own stuff isn't just because I want to make cool stuff. Like, yeah, that's part of it. But my issue was being somebody that's 5'6" and has a 23-inch head. Most of the masks just don't fit me right. They look a little too big, and I end up looking like a bobblehead, straight up. And whenever I do my patterns, like the specific ones that I sell on Etsy or the ones that I put up for free on Facebook, I list them as being for 22-inch heads. It can fit a 23, but man, it's tight. Like, it's really tight. So just to give you an example here, this Carnage mask, for example, isn't much bigger than my own head. Like, this fits me like a second skin. So if you make this and you don't try it on at any point during the build process and your head's 23 inches and you think this is going to fit, it will fit you. But let me show you how it fits me. And this goes for both the Carnage and the Venom and pretty much any mask that I happen to make. Okay? Which is that whenever I put this on, that is how tightly it fits to go on my head, okay? Like I say, I do that for myself personally to reduce the risk of bobblehead. Now, the problem happens to be that whenever you do something like that, whether it's Carnage or Venom or any mask, Batman, doesn't matter, the tighter the foam is on your head, the less space there is between this foam mask and your skin, okay? Now, even in this one, I put a couple pads just to raise it up. You can see there's like a couple here in the back in black, and then one in the center here in blue. That gives me literally just a couple millimeters on the sides and the front of my face for air to circulate. So I can breathe, and that's, the only type of air I have. So walking around a convention, in particular in, for example, the Red Hood, I just about blacked out. Because I got so overheated and the convention was so crowded, I couldn't get to the cosplay rest and repair room. And my Red Hood mask fits even tighter than the Carnage or the Venom or the Batman or anything that I made. So, considering how tight it is something to keep in mind. If your head's 23 inches and the mask like mine is going to fit you tight like a skin, will it look better? Ultimately, I think yes. As my buddy Kobe looked at me in my first Batman costume, he was amazed at the construction, but the one thing he said was, dude, you look like the world's biggest trick-or-treater. And I understand that. I get that. So, being that as it is, I want to do what I can to change that. And that's why I started making my own masks. But if you're looking for comfort or breathability, or if you have a child that you're making this mask for, please, for God's sakes, people, make sure they're not going to black out at a convention, okay? I don't care how much the child wants it or how much you want them to do it, to take pictures of them and put them up on Instagram. My youngest daughter wanted to go as Rocket Raccoon. And if you want to check out the Rocket Raccoon photos of her, there are plenty on the Facebook and the Instagram page. She wanted to be covered head to toe in fur. She wanted a legit, like, basically a furry suit. And we said no, because we're at that convention for 8 hours, and you will be so hot. So what I ended up making her was this Rocket Raccoon vest here with a tail, and we did some cute makeup on her face and made her like a jumpsuit and a gun and baby Groot and all this other stuff, right? But covering her head to toe in fur and expecting her to walk around a convention for even a couple hours is insane. She wanted to do it. We said no. No. So it's always something to keep in mind. If you have a kid, make the mask a little bigger so they can have air circulation and so they can breathe, okay? If you were going to close the mouth off like I did on Carnage so it looks cool, maybe don't. So they can breathe and so air can circulate through so they're not burning up. Especially kids more so than adults, I think, are just running around having fun. They won't notice it. Next thing you know, they're getting into like dehydration, heat exhaustion, things like that. So that's something to consider anytime you're buying patterns and anytime you're going to make something, especially a mask. Or if you're buying a latex mask to wear, keep in mind, once again, there's no breathability. If that thing covers your whole face, your whole head, you're just going to be pouring sweat under that. And you could have a literal meltdown where your body just gets, it's like, nope, you're going to start blacking out, just like I did. So be careful, okay? Adequate ventilation and airflow are two things to consider. But aside from that, maybe you buy patterns that are too small. Maybe they're too big. If you're computer savvy and the patterns are PDFs, I'm pretty sure you can scale them relatively easy. Everything I do is through a program called the GIMP, and it's not very common. I could go on the computer and show you how to do that, but if you already scale things on the computer, you don't need this video. But Cosplay Noob, Pretty and Violent Cosplay, actually a lot of people just flat out tell me they're not very computer savvy. So if they purchase something and they print it out and it doesn't fit, they don't really know what to do. And I end up, like, if I have to, like, I will make custom patterns for them. But I charge because they're pulling time out of my life, my family life, my job, and my, YouTube schedule. I do charge for it, but I will do it. I will customize. But in this video, I want to show you guys how to customize not just my patterns, but any patterns by hand. Even patterns you come up with. So the first thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to make our own patterns. And then I'm going to show you how to scale those up and the ones you buy as well. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is a mannequin head. Now, if you happen to find a mannequin head that fits you exactly, that's awesome. But if you're like me and you don't have one that fits exactly, well, you're going to have to scale it up. And I scaled this up to the size of my head exactly. Okay, exactly. So it is 23 inches around, the proportions in the back, the jaw, everything is exact. Except the jaw, I did a little different. Can you see the jaw? Do you notice on this side, it's more slanted and more pointy, and on this side, it's more square. You notice that? Why is that? Is it because I'm stupid and I'm untalented and I don't know what I'm doing? Sound off in the comments. I'm just kidding. No, it's because I make patterns off this and a whole bunch of other stuff. But this is one that I make patterns that exactly resemble a human head. For example, you could use this to make Deathstroke or Red Hood or even a Batman. You'd have to, put some ears up off your pattern like I did on mine. You can go back and watch my Batman video if you wish from, I want to say almost 2 years ago. It will show you how I did that pattern. But today, we're going to do a basic face pattern. From there, you can use your imagination on how to make more. And if you want more than this, in my older videos, I used to show the patterning process, but the problem is nobody wanted to see it. Everybody kept complaining. They wanted me to just put the patterns on Etsy or Facebook and just get into the build video, because it would take anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour of the video just me showing how I made the patterns. So first thing you do, once you get your mannequin head and it's scaled, if you want, you can do the same thing with the chin, but you don't have to. But that's what I did to make it easier, because you only need one half of the face to make a pattern. Once you get that one half, you can just flip that piece over, trace it out, cut it out, and you have the second half. So, as you can see with this, I use a lot of saran wrap and grocery bags and things like that and packing tape to get it up to size. Now that it's the size I want, first thing I'm going to do is you can either take saran wrap or just an old grocery bag like I have and throw that grocery bag over it. Now that I got my bag on, I tied it in the back just to hold it in place while I taped the crap out of it with some packing tape. Pow! But you don't have to use packing tape. You can use duct tape or whatever. I don't suggest Scotch tape or masking tape or anything like that. Packing tape or duct tape works pretty good. If you want to be able to put this pattern on your head because you need to figure out exactly where your eyes are, or you want to, I don't know, just double check something, I would suggest using clear saran wrap and not a bag. But we're not going to be doing that. The next thing, once you get this covered, is to take a marker. Doesn't matter what color or what kind. And what you're going to need to do is draw from the center of this all the way straight to the back. And what that is going to do is that is going to make your center line. That's going to be your main initial cut line. Now from here, you've got multiple options and avenues as far as exactly how you want to do your pattern. Now you'll notice, like patterns, for example, such as the Carnage mask or the anti-venom that I'm going to have coming out here soon, they're only 2 pattern pieces for the main pattern. One half, the other half. But you don't have to do that. If you don't like that method, there's other ways to do it. One of those is to put your cut lines like this. Have your cut lines going from the front all the way to the back through here, and then another one on the side. This will reduce the amount of V-cuts you will have in your pattern. I like the V-cuts, and honestly, I feel like it's easier for me to do definition, like with the heat gun on areas like the temple, the cheekbone, the nose, the jaw, you know, the ear, all this stuff, the back of the head, all that heat definition you want to shape and form into it to make your mask look realistic, I personally feel is easier with this system. So that's why I do it. But if you don't like it like that, you can just do it a different way. It's fine. Okay, now that my center line is on here, I've switched to a black Sharpie. I'm going to put 3 lines like this. This is just in reference to where my mouth is, the point of my nose is going to be, and my eyes are basically going to sit for the eye holes, right? So, one half of this pattern, of course, is more square, and one half is more rounded. So the squared off jaw side, I thought, hey, what the heck? I'm going to take it, follow it down. I'm going to take this line under the chin, back up to here, and right here is where the ear is. I'm going to go ahead and mark that off, because that's going to be a cut line as well for me. And then from there, I'm going to follow this line here around to the back. Okay? Boom. Follow that line straight up. That's the basic shell shape you're going to cut off. You're going to cut from the back, down the center, around the side, underneath where I drew on the chin here, up around the ear, and then go back and cut all the way back to where you started. That's the basic shape of any pattern for basic stuff. Now let's make this side Red Hood. So what am I going to need? First of all, I'm going to need to figure out the eyes here. So my eyes rest about here. Oh, I'm going to start to draw in my eye shape. I want to look slightly wicked. So there we go. I think that's pretty good. I like that. Okay, so now that's done, well, where's the nose? Well, first of all, get a little old school. Go straight line to there. A straight line coming down underneath the eyes out to here, and then down right to the chin. And that's going to be another cut line, okay? And then from here, you're going to come up off the brow of the mask, boom, to make that cool plated section that the Red Hood has that comes from here around to the back side. Now, you don't have to follow your plate all the way back. You can stop your plate here, for example, or you can stop your plate here. I'm just going to go all the way around to the actual rear right here, okay? Okay. Or if this was Deathstroke, you know, you could draw in your sort of Deathstroke shape as well. Now, over here on this side, you know, what the heck? Let's make this side Spider-Man. Spider-Man's cool. So, once again, you know, the eyes are right around in there. Go ahead and come in and start drawing in your Spider-Man eye. Just like that. Boom. Spider-Man. Okay. So there you go. This, of course, isn't perfect, but you get the idea. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off and show you what I end up coming up with. So now I have both pieces, both sides cut out here. And just to show you really quick. Bam. Pattern piece, half of my head, covers perfectly. Even with a beanie on. But here's the thing. The stuff you're making this out of isn't going to be paper thin. Unless you're making it out of paper. And you're doing the pepcora. You're making it out of 5mm foam. So, if your mannequin head is exactly the same size as your head, the pattern you make may be too small. There's a remedy for that. Two remedies, actually. One is just make your mannequin head the size of the mask that you want to make. Make it a little bit bigger than your head. At least 5mm. At least 5 millimeters higher all the way around. Okay, about a 1/4 inch. All the way around. That will ensure that your pattern, when you put it to foam, will work. What I do is I just scale them up slightly. Before we get into the whole scaling them up slightly part of this whole thing, we're going to need to get into the whole cutting out the rest of the pattern thing. Now for the Spider-Man one, it's kind of simple. But for the Red Hood one, it's going to be a little more complicated. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up the Red Hood one on camera so you guys can see it. Okay, so I'm going to take my pattern here. You see I already have everything drawn out from the eye to the front and the top plates and all that good stuff. I've already cut up around the ear like I described. I cut along the center seam and I cut up the back. The next thing I'm going to do though, I'm going to follow this line that I put in here for the top plate. So that's one piece. And then we'll do this mouth area here. That'll be part number 2. Okay. Followed by cutting out the eye area here. Boom. And what you are left with is your 3 pattern pieces. You have that front mouth plate. You have this part here that's going to connect up over the eye and make the eye shape once you glue it back together. The main thing from here is to make sure these lay flat. Okay? So like this here, it's got kind of a ruffle in it. What I'm going to do is take my scissors, if I can, and cut that right down there. So when you lay that flat, it has a V now. Okay? This is pretty good, this is pretty good. In fact, this whole side's pretty good. If you were to trace this on the foam, cut it out, heat it, perfect. But this one up here, look, it's just not laying flat. Just not happening. So, this is why you notice all those V-cuts in my patterns. Because you need to lay this flat to be able to turn it into a legitimate pattern. Okay? I'm going to go through here at the points where I know I need my V-cuts and start cutting into this pattern piece. Bam! There. Now that that's done, it can be laid out flat and traced. Okay? And that's why the V-cuts are in the foam, obviously, to help give it its curvature back. Because essentially I'm taking a curved object, trying to make it flat, and then put it on another object, and then curve that back to the initial shape. So once you get, like I said, one side's pattern, you trace those out on your foam, you flip them over, trace out the other side, and you have your opposite pattern. Okay, so before I start tracing out my pattern here, I had to put it in place. Especially these ones that you make, they're a little unruly sometimes. And this one here is, of course, the Spider-Man. I decided to do it instead of the Red Hood because whenever you're scaling stuff up, even slightly, these V-cuts can trip you up. And that's what I have what I had a lot of problem with in the beginning, till I realized what I was actually doing through trial and error. So all the inside areas like this, I follow pretty much exactly, okay? I don't mess with them. And the reason for that is I don't want to increase inwards the size of the eye hole. The eye hole needs to stay the same, as well as the lines of the face as well. I am going to keep the same. What I need to account for in this particular pattern that I've just made is the extra space, or the space that I'm going to lose, or however you want to look at it, from having to use 5mm EVA foam. Okay? So, I'm not altering the face, because if I widen this area here, there's going to be too much space between the eyes, and it's going to look funny, and it's not going to fit right, and it's not going to shape right. Same thing with this. If I end up extending this area and bringing it out, it's going to mess up the entire shape of the face. And since I know this is pretty much the exact length and shape that I want for the base of my head, etc., I'm not going to alter this bottom line either. All of these bottom lines here, etc., they're all going to stay exactly the same. Okay? Where I need a lot more room for, and where you have more room for error when you're making your own patterns, is the back. Okay? So generally, whenever I put this onto a 5mm head from what I have, I need to account for generally about a 1/2 inch overall. So to have a 1/2 inch overall, I need about a 1/4 inch on either side of my pattern, if that makes sense, because there's 2 pattern pieces. So to extend this extra 1/4 inch, I use just the back side. And you can take a ruler and measure a 1/4 inch if you want and put dots. I explained this in the previous version of the video, and that's where I also tripped up and misspoke. So there. Okay? I'm extending this out by a 1/4 inch to account for the 5mm. Now, this is a system that I use because my head is 23 inches, and like I say, the mannequin is exactly the same. The reason why I don't have a mannequin that is different is because I then want to try the mask onto the mannequin head to make sure it fits there before putting it on my head. Also, it's a nice thing for reference. You know, the mask fits on this solidly and doesn't slop around. So if I need to paint or work on it with any sort of detail, I can do that on this. The other solution is just have several mannequin heads that you scale up. I would do that, but I usually just don't have the time. Okay, so to reiterate, all these lines match up with the initial pattern. I don't want to alter that. Like I say, I just need to account for space for the foam. So starting here, I start off at this beginning point, and I would then measure my 1/4 inch mark up here and draw the line between it so it comes down at an angle. Okay, so you're extending that. Everything else is going to pretty much remain the same. All these V-cuts, everything. Okay? They're all going to remain the same. You don't want to alter them. All you're going to do is extend them out to meet up with this new area here. That's all. And follow the original line and curvature that they have. That's it. And that will give you your extra space to account for all that. Okay? Now, let's say you get a mask pattern and it's too small. The best way to try this out is to just take some paper, or you can even take some saran wrap and tape and lay your saran wrap down, tape it out just like this, take the pattern that you bought, put it on it, trace it out, cut it out, and then tape everything together, all the V-cuts, everything, like you would actually assemble the foam mask. See if that fits. If your mock-up doesn't fit or it fits really tightly, you're going to need to enlarge it. Once again, because whatever foam you're making it out of, whether it's 3mm or 5mm or, 7/16 or 1/2 inch, doesn't matter what it is, you got to account for that space. It's not going to be as thin as the paper of your pattern or any sort of mock-up that you're making. So if you want to extend it overall, the entire size of it, let's say that you need a 1/2 inch all the way around. So that would be a 1/4 inch on either side. Well, we've already extended it here, but we're going to go ahead and I'm going to extend this same way I did, like on the rest of it. Of course, I'm not measuring it. You would want to measure, like I say, and put dots. But for the sake of speed, I'm not doing that. Okay, so I'm going to extend all my lines, yada, yada, yada. Bring this up. Once again, V-cuts need to stay the same. If anything, you might want to expand these V-cuts inwards. If you're going past like a 1/2 inch or so of expansion on a pattern, and this is something I did not say in the previous version of this video, if you're going past a 1/2 inch or so, you really probably should use a computer, figure it out, or have somebody else do it for you, essentially. Okay? This may seem irrelevant, but trust me, there is a point that's about to come up here, and it involves the eye. In fact, you may have already figured out what it is. So, this has now been measured up a 1/4 inch overall. V-cuts have been extended. Like I say, at about a 1/4 inch, it's not really a big deal. But what the issue you have is the eye. You have this issue I talked about earlier, where the wider and the bigger you start to expand your pattern. Let's say I went, instead of a 1/4 inch, let's say I went a 1/2 inch, okay? Now you have a full inch in between the eyes, which is probably going to be too much. So what you then need to do is you then need to bring in your pattern to pull out 100 pins. Okay, got my pins out so I can now move my pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this up to where my extension lines are. Okay, to wherever I extended it. And I'm going to redraw this eye so that the eye, I'm going to have to pin this. There. I'm going to redraw this so that the eye now has the same gap between it, because I don't need to have a giant gap in between my eyes. You won't be able to see out of it right. It'll look goofy. So those are the problems that you run into, and of course this is just an example. You can go further down the rabbit hole. I don't want to make a 2-hour video on scaling mask patterns by hand, but hopefully this will give you some ideas and a reference on how to do it by hand. If you don't, like for example, I say several people message me, they don't own a computer. The smartphone is about as, that's how they get online, that's how they do everything. That's pretty much it. So, like I say, this is the way to do it. However, once you get past like a 1/2 inch extension out, say 1 inch overall, once you get past that, it gets really tricky because the V-cuts will then become too small. You need to make them bigger. It almost gets to a point where you have to use a computer to enlarge the pattern or cut it up into sections and enlarge it if the sections are too big to be printed out on A4 or 8.5 full by 11 paper, and that, is all you have. You're going to have to use the computer route. You don't have much options at that point. Or you just make a custom pattern to fit you. One of the people I just made a custom pattern for was a very large man, and there was no way by hand that I could enlarge the Venom pattern that I had for him. I had to make a custom one. Okay, so now that we're done with talking about mask patterns, let's talk about armor patterns. Okay, whether it's mask patterns or armor patterns, if they have multiple pieces and you decide to increase it by, let's say, a 1/4 inch on the outside, or to decrease it by a 1/4 inch, you have to do that to all the other corresponding pieces so they will then match up. Otherwise you'll have one that's too small and it won't fit with the rest of them. Okay? So if you're going to downscale one section, then you have to downscale everything else. And if you're going to upscale one section, you have to upscale everything else. So before you start cutting foam, even if you're not sure that your pattern's going to fit, just cut them out of paper, which is what I did here. And once you cut them out of paper, you can then place them on your body. Okay, so I took my two pattern pieces and I purposely made them too big, okay? And I taped them together and placed them on me. Now look, it goes from side to side on my chest. It fits, right? No, it doesn't. Because here's the thing, if you move your arm, oh, look at that. You can't move your arm inwards. You have to keep your arm at your side. And if you bring it up and you try to push it in or do anything like that, it immediately will get caught on your armor. You're not going to be able to do it. Or you're going to end up, if you bring both arms together, you're going to end up basically smushing your project if you're strong enough to crush the foam. That doesn't work. So I need to scale this down. And for my particular height and size, it's going to have to come down at least a 1/4 inch on either piece all the way around, which totals to a 1/2 inch. To do this, of course, would be just like before. You take a ruler and you measure out a 1/4 inch on the inside, for example, if you have to scale them down. Okay, and then you would then draw your lines between all your dots once you measure all the way around from the entire pattern. And if I will be taking, for example, the total of a 1/4 inch off of this pattern piece on the outside edge, that means I'm reducing it by a 1/2 inch overall. If you measure it from end to end, it will be a 1/2 inch shorter. You need to reduce each and every other corresponding pattern piece that would lock in with it by that same amount, okay? You'd have to go around on all these and at about a 1/4 inch, or take a ruler at a 1/4 inch, mark out your marks, and then draw your lines. And that's what you would cut out. Okay, and now that the pattern has been reduced that much on either piece, I actually have the room to have mobility with either arm, for example, without my arm actually totally smashing into this and causing a problem. And of course, you need to scale down all the corresponding pieces, or scale up if that's the issue as well, okay? I think that it wouldn't fit, and once you finally got it all together and you tried to put it on, it didn't fit. What do? How did this happen? Maybe you glued some things off, so you had to do excessive heat forming to get the shape right. And if that's the case, then it just shrunk due to all the heat forming and it doesn't fit. Or maybe you decided to put LEDs in it, or you put some thick lenses in it and all of a sudden it's too tight now. Or I don't know, you decided to grow your hair out or get dreadlocks, I have no idea. But let's just say that all of a sudden, you know, it doesn't fit. Well, there's one easy solution to this, and it's unfortunate, but if your mask is still in the raw phase and you haven't actually painted it, even if you've painted it, you can do this, but man, you got a lot of repair work to do. But if it's in the raw phase, you can simply cut up this seam in the back, put it on. However wide it's spread out, if it's not past 1.5 inches or so, you can put a wedge in it. And what a wedge is just simply a long piece of foam that you're going to cut into a triangle. Triangle will look something like this, okay? The width at the bottom is the width of, say, the theoretical gap. If your gap was 1 inch, then that's what you do. Then you measure the length of the cut that you did in it so that it spreads open evenly, and that's your stopping point for your triangle. Okay? You measure out, say, if it's 1 inch, you have your square piece, you measure the length of your cut, put a dot in the center, and then use a ruler to draw a line to either end. Then you have your spacer wedge, and you can contact cement that in to give you a little bit more space. It's ugly, but it works. One of the only problems with it is that it's harder to get the heat forming to line up with this, and you also have to do a lot more silicone work, because instead of just having one seam to cover with silicone, now you got two, one on either side of this. The other thing is that some people have issue with my general style and design of masks is my sloped backs. A lot of EVA foam patterns, the backs come out more straight, but I feel like that makes it look slightly less realistic. The reason why it comes out straight is because it's easier to get your head in. Like you saw in the beginning of the video where I was like shoving that Carnage mask on my head. That's because the sloped back, which gives its added realism, actually makes it much harder to put on. So I'm going to show you how to alter that on my pattern or any pattern like that. If you happen to try to make it and it doesn't fit and you don't like it, it's pretty easy to alter that. And how you do it is this angle here and this one here. That's what's causing that curve. So before you cut out both patterns, you're going to take your master pattern and you're going to alter it by bringing this more straight down and matching back up with the base. That will eliminate that curve and that small hole, which makes it harder to get on your head. However, like I say, that's something that you may want for comfort, and not just in my patterns, but in anybody's. But it's something that people complain about. Even people that I make masks for, I'm like, what size is your head? If they're local, I have them come over and try on some of mine. They like it. They say it fits great when it's on, but it's really hard to get on. And then I ask them the question, do you want to sacrifice the look and the visual aesthetic of the mask for one that just comes down straight in the back and is easier to put on? A lot of people say yes. They do. And it also is, it also provides more room for air to pass through the mask and for your head to breathe. I'm just stubborn and go for aesthetics over my own personal comfort. That's something I choose to sacrifice. Once again, if you have a child, these are things to take into serious consideration. Well, I know that was longer than the first video, and I do apologize for that, but decided to add in some more things like how to make your own patterns, which I got a lot of questions about, and hopefully that'll help you out. Once again, I do apologize for misspeaking in the last video, and thank you for catching that so I could correct it, refilm the video, and put it back up, hopefully better than the first. I feel like this one probably didn't move as fast as the first one, sorry, but it's still there. And I'm also working on a anti-venom mask, and I'll be doing a video for that, hopefully up soon, and there will be a couple surprises with that video, so you should definitely be watching for that and check it out. And I did recently pass 2,000 subscribers. I want to say thank you to everybody for subscribing, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you would like to see more like this, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if all you weren't watching and subscribing. So I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate the feedback. And if you like or dislike this, please comment below. I would like to hear any sort of suggestions. I'm going to be doing more videos in this series like this. I'm going to try to put them up during the middle of the week and still put the build videos up on the weekend. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.